London, 1888. A city gripped by fear. 5 women brutally murdered. A killer who vanished into the fog, leaving behind a mystery unsolved for over a century. Jack the Ripper. A name that still haunts the streets of Whitechapel. Who was he? And why do we remain captivated by his horrific crimes? Let's discuss.
Okay, strap yourself in, because today we're diving into, well, the smog-filled streets, I guess you could say, the gaslit streets of 1888 London.
Ooh.
Talking about, of course, Jack the Ripper.
Of course.
I mean, we've all heard the name, seen the movies, right? But what is it about this case, even after all this time, that still makes it like the ultimate unsolved mystery?
You know, I think it's so fascinating is how this case, more than almost any other, really tapped into some of our deepest fears.
Right.
The darkness hiding in plain sight, the vulnerability of, living in a city,
Right.
and this unsettling idea that anyone, even someone you pass on the street, could be harboring these, monstrous secrets.
Like that saying, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And our source today, excerpts from the killer's own Wikipedia page, lays out just how real that terror became for the people of Whitechapel.
Yeah, because to truly understand, I think, Jack the Ripper, you have to understand Whitechapel.
Right.
And, forget the romanticized fog and cobblestones, that we see in the movies.
Right.
This was London's underbelly, right? Impoverished, overcrowded, and really rife with social unrest.
Yeah, and the source paints a really grim picture.
Yeah.
Imagine an infant mortality rate where over half the children didn't reach their 5th birthday.
Yeah. That's a truly sobering statistic.
Right.
It really speaks volumes about the living conditions, lack of sanitation,
Wow.
the just the sheer struggle for survival that many faced on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And when we talk about vulnerability, it's no surprise that the source highlights that Whitechapel alone had over 60 brothels and an estimated 1,200 women working as prostitutes.
Desperate times,
Yeah.
desperate measures, as they say.
Yeah.
It's easy to see how this environment could attract a predator,
Right.
and how that fog itself, literal and metaphorical, could provide cover.
Absolutely. And couple that with, the historical context.
Yeah.
London was in the throes of the Industrial Revolution,
Mhm.
influx of immigrants, economic hardship, and this palpable sense of unease.
Wow.
It created this perfect storm,
Right.
a breeding ground for fear and suspicion that Jack the Ripper would come to embody.
It's like the backdrop of a Gothic novel come to life.
Totally.
And speaking of Gothic, let's talk about those murders.
Okay.
Because while the source mentions 11 murders investigated as part of the Whitechapel murders between 1888 and 1891,
Right.
the canonical 5, as they're called, are the ones seared into our collective memory.
Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly.
Right.
These were women, not just names on a police blotter.
Right.
Each had a life, a story, tragically cut short.
Of course.
And as we, delve into the details, I think it's important to remember that.
Yeah, the source doesn't shy away from the brutality.
No.
The throat slashing, the abdominal mutilation. It's the kind of detail that sticks with you.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
makes it more than just a historical curiosity.
And it's that escalating nature of those attacks, the fact that the killer seemed to become bolder, more brazen with each victim,
Right.
that really, I think, gripped the public's imagination, Imagine for a moment you're a detective in 1888.
Right?
No CSI, no DNA analysis,
Wow.
just gaslight and shadows,
Talk about a nightmare.
Right.
The source says thousands were interviewed, hundreds investigated,
Yeah.
but those Victorian-era forensics were extremely limited.
Extremely late.
How do you even begin to, track down a ghost in a city already shrouded in fog?
It was a Herculean task, honestly. I mean, they were going house to house, right? Trying to, build a profile based on witness testimony.
Yeah.
Which, let's be honest, in a place like Whitechapel could be unreliable at best.
Right.
And then there's the sheer volume of information, the dead ends, the false leads.
And to make matters worse, a good portion of the original police files were destroyed during the Blitz.
Oh.
It's like trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle with half the pieces missing.
Yeah.
It seems almost impossible.
Almost. But what we do have from the source provides I think, a fascinating glimpse into their process.
Go ahead.
For example, because of the nature of the mutilations, particularly the removal of organs, investigators suspected someone with, anatomical knowledge.
So they focused on butchers, slaughterhouse workers, even surgeons.
Exactly.
Wow.
Can you imagine the pressure those investigators were under?
Oh, I can only imagine.
Trying to narrow down suspects in a city of millions with every newspaper in the world, like breathing down your neck.
Right. And speaking of pressure, right, let's talk about how this case played out in the public eye.
Okay.
I mean, Jack the Ripper wasn't just a killer, right? He was practically a media sensation.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
This case really, I think, marked the birth of what we now call media frenzy.
Right.
Newspapers were the social media of the day, and they knew a gripping story when they saw one.
Right.
Headlines screaming about the latest gruesome details.
Oh, yeah.
The public just couldn't get enough.
No, it's like the more horrific it got, the more people were just glued to the story.
Totally.
The source actually says that newspapers were flying off the stands.
It makes sense when you think about it.
Yeah.
The Ripper case coincided with this rise in mass circulation newspapers.
Right.
Thanks to these new technologies and a growing literate population, right?
Yeah.
So suddenly, information, even sensationalized information, was more readily available than ever before.
And here we are over a century later,
Right.
still captivated by the same story.
Right.
I have to wonder, though, how much did that media attention
Right.
help or hinder the actual investigation?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Did the constant scrutiny force the police to be more thorough?
Right.
Or did it muddy the waters with speculation and false leads?
Right. Right.
I mean, imagine the pressure cooker those investigators were in,
Yeah.
trying to separate fact from fiction with the eyes of the world, like watching their every move.
Yeah, it's easy to see how it could have tipped either way.
Totally.
But while the police were trying to, maintain order and follow, the few clues they had,
Yeah.
everyday citizens were taking matters into their own hands.
Yeah.
The Whitechapel Vigilance Committee.
Right.
It sounds like something out of a movie.
It's a fascinating example, I think,
Yep.
of how fear and frustration can really galvanize a community.
Wow.
These were average Londoner shopkeepers, clerks, even some women
Wow.
who really felt like the police weren't doing enough to protect them.
Yeah.
So they took to the streets themselves.
Patrolling the darkened alleys.
Yeah.
Keeping an eye out for anything suspicious.
Mm-hmm.
Did they ever find anything concrete?
It's hard to say for sure. They certainly, I think, played a role in heightening awareness,
Okay.
putting pressure on the authorities.
Right.
They even offered their own reward for information leading to the Ripper's capture.
Wow.
I mean, imagine the level of fear and determination that must have driven them.
It really speaks to the very real terror that gripped Whitechapel at the time.
Yeah.
And then of course there were the letters.
So the letter.
Hundreds of them. If the source is to be believed,
Right.
claiming to be from Jack the Ripper himself.
Yeah.
Can you imagine sifting through all that mail,
Oh, I can't even imagine.
trying to figure out which, if any, were real?
Right. It's really a testament to the power of this case, how
Yeah.
it captivated the public imagination and unfortunately attracted its share of morbid curiosity seekers.
Yeah.
Most of the letters were quickly dismissed as hoaxes or attempts to capitalize on the notoriety.
Right.
But there are three in particular that stand out even today.
The Dear Boss letter.
Yeah, dear boss.
That's the one where the name Jack the Ripper actually comes from.
Exactly.
Chilling to think that a killer's legacy
Right.
could be cemented by a single letter, potentially even a cruel joke.
Precisely. The source highlights how that moniker, Jack the Ripper,
Yeah.
really resonated with the public,
Wow.
turning a shadowy figure into this near mythical entity.
Right.
The Saucy Jackie postcard
Right.
is another intriguing piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Again, its authenticity is debated,
Of course.
but it really demonstrates the way this case invited speculation
Yeah.
and just fueled the media firestorm.
Right. Right. And then, of course, you have the From Hell letter,
Right. From hell.
which took things to a whole new level of disturbing.
This one arrived with a gruesome addition.
Right.
A small box containing what appeared to be half a human kidney.
Oh, wow.
Was it real?
Yeah.
Was it a twisted attempt to taunt the police and the public?
Right.
The source says that even today, there's no definitive answer.
Wow. It's incredible to think that even with, modern forensics,
Right.
some mysteries are just too shrouded in time to ever fully unravel.
Yeah.
But even with all the unknowns, we do know that the killings, at least those officially attributed to Jack the Ripper, eventually stopped.
Right. While Mara Jane Kelly is generally considered the last of the canonical 5 victims,
Right.
the investigation continued, encompassing other murders that shared similarities with the Rippers, modus operandi, Rose Mylett, Alice Mackenzie. Their stories are often overshadowed, but I think they remind us that the shadow of violence really extended beyond those 5 names.
Of course. And then there were the Thames mysteries.
Yes, the Thames
The
mystery.
dismembered bodies found along the River Thames. Yeah, I'd almost forgotten about those.
Yeah.
Were they ever connected definitively to Jack the Ripper?
That's a debate that continues to this day.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, were they the work of the same hand?
Wow.
Or a copycat capitalizing on the widespread fear?
Right.
It's a chilling thought either way.
Yeah.
The idea that there may have been multiple killers operating with such brutality
Right.
in the same city at the same time.
It adds another layer to the mystery, for sure.
For sure.
And then there's the case of John Gill,
Right.
the young boy found murdered and mutilated in a way that, like, eerily echoed the Ripper's methods.
A tragic reminder that the Ripper's reign of terror, whether, real or imagined,
Yeah.
went beyond the confines of Whitechapel,
Right.
instilling fear across London and beyond.
It's a lot to unpack even now.
Yeah.
So we have a city on edge,
Mm-hmm.
a killer who's seemingly vanished into thin air,
Right.
and a mystery that has spawned, like, countless theories and interpretations.
Countless.
What's the takeaway here?
Yeah.
Why, after all this time, are we still so drawn to the story of Jack the Ripper?
It's a question really that has haunted, criminologists, historians,
Right.
armchair detectives, all of us for over a century.
Because let's face, there's a bit of armchair detective in all of us, right?
Absolutely.
And we hear these details, and our minds can't help but start, like, piecing together theories.
that are darkness.
Leveraging his anatomical knowledge for some twisted purpose.
Right.
A barber wielding his blades with, like, deadly precision.
Right.
Or someone even more unexpected.
Yeah.
A nobleman with a dark secret.
Right.
A scorned lover seeking revenge.
I think that's the allure of Jack the Ripper, right?
Yeah.
He exists in this strange space between, like, historical figure and urban legend.
Right.
We have just enough information to fuel endless speculation,
Right.
but not enough to definitively close the case.
Right.
And the source really emphasizes how that lack of resolution, that lingering question mark, keeps us coming back for more.
It's like a puzzle box we can't resist opening.
Totally.
Even if we know we might not like what we find inside.
Right.
But beyond the mystery, beyond, like, the gruesome details, there's another aspect to this case that I think is important to remember.
Of course, yeah.
The victims.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the whodunit,
Right.
the hunt for the monster,
Yeah.
and forget that real lives were lost.
Right.
These were women with families, friends, dreams,
Absolutely.
not just names in a case file.
And their stories, as tragic as they were, serves as this, I think, powerful reminder of the human cost of this case.
Right.
These women were more than just victims. They were individuals who deserve to be remembered, not just for how they died,
Right.
but for who they were in life.
Absolutely. And while we may never know the true identity of their killer or fully understand, like, the darkness that drove him,
Yeah.
their deaths did ultimately shine a light on, the plight of the poor and vulnerable in Victorian London.
Yeah, the source makes it clear that that the horrors of the Ripper case really forced society to confront the realities of poverty,
Right.
inequality,
Of course.
and the really dangerous conditions that existed in places like Whitechapel.
Right.
It sparked a conversation, fueled social reforms,
Wow.
and ultimately, though tragically, I think, led to some positive change. And perhaps that's part of the reason why this case continues to resonate with us today.
Right, because it's a reminder that even in the face of, like, unimaginable evil,
Yeah.
humanity can find a way to learn, to grow,
Right.
to strive for a better tomorrow.
Precisely. The legacy of Jack the Ripper is complex, multifaceted. It's a mix of horror, mystery, and a sobering reminder, I think, of the challenges that still persist even today.
Well said. We've walked the shadowed streets of Whitechapel,
We have.
explored, the mind of a killer,
Yeah.
and examined the enduring impact of this unsolved mystery.
It's incredible.
What stands out to you?
Oh, that's a tough one.
What chills you to the bone?
Yeah.
And what gives you hope?
Yeah.
Because even after all this time,
Right.
the story of Jack the Ripper still has the power to provoke, to challenge,
Absolutely.
and to remind us that some questions
Yeah.
may never have easy answers.
That's right.
Until next time, keep exploring,
Yeah.
keep questioning.